Welcome to Higher Education Advocates Podcast. This podcast is about supporting students and families as they navigate through the post-secondary complexities of college. From time to time, I will touch base on current events. Expect to hear jam-packed information that includes strategies and tips. The goal is to empower families and help them make informed decisions. Expect to hear from higher education professionals, HR professionals, tax pros, mental health professionals, financial aid administrators, students, parents, plus more. My name is Teresa Harris, and I'm a college financial aid expert. I'm also the founder and owner of Scholarship Momma. I have a master's in higher education, and I am an alum of Robert Morris University in Chicago. I'm a wife, mom, and grandmother. My heart is for our youth, but the information I'm sharing is relevant for all age groups. When it comes to college, my experience as an adult student was fantastic. I was eager to learn and ready to start a new career, and the only way I could pay for college was to borrow loans. One thing I failed to realize is the impact student loans would have on my future. I borrowed thousands of dollars during my undergraduate career, and as time went on, the amount I owed ballooned. As of this recording, I'm still paying off student loans, and I completed college years ago. For the record, I don't have anything against student loans, but I do believe in responsible borrowing, which is something I didn't do. As for the podcast, expect to hear from me on a bi-weekly basis. This podcast is available on Anchor FM and Scholarship Momma YouTube channel. For more information, check out my website, www.scholarshipmomma.com. Hey friends, this is Teresa Harris, aka Scholarship Momma. Welcome to Higher Education Advocates Podcast. I am back with part 2 of my mental health wellness series. I'm happy to have Renee Causay on today's podcast. She received her master's in community counseling from DePaul University and is currently in her last year working on her doctorate in clinical psychology with a concentration in neuropsychology. Woo! Today, we'll be talking about emotional well-being for children during COVID-19 and share some tips on how families can help their children. Welcome, Renee. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, how are you doing? Well, you pretty much summarized what's going on with me, but I am currently working in a psych hospital. So we have been dealing with a lot of COVID cases, and the psych hospital is from pediatric to adult and different types of presenting issues. And so, I'm still going in to work as a frontline worker. So I've been actually doing that, but in trying to finish up my dissertation so I can graduate in 2021 and hopefully, I can walk across the stage. But I'm sure, that's how everyone is feeling right now, overwhelmed and not knowing what's in the future. So it can be a little bit challenging and sometimes stressful, but pretty much that's what I've been doing for the last couple of months. Well, more than a couple of months, but with the pandemic, of course, a lot of things have changed.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, before we get started, I want to thank you for being a frontline worker. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's my question. In your opinion, what is the potential impact of COVID-19 on children's emotional well-being?
Well, kids are very resilient. However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't impact them in some way. And I'm sure that it's been very challenging because it's like the rug is being pulled from under you. What you know as your normal routine does not exist anymore, i.e., going to school and interacting with peers and teachers and being able to see grandma, grandpa, or your cousins, or the play dates that you usually have scheduled. So this has a huge emotional impact on kids in several instances, like the education platform. And like I said, the way that they socialize with family and friends, it just being able to go outside. Some people don't have backyards where they can go outside and play, but even then it's still different, right? Because you have to stay within these certain perimeters and not, go outside the yard, or stay 6 feet away, or wear a mask. So, all these new things. And I know kids are like, what is going on? This is,
Yes.
I mean, trying to get a child to sit down for 5 minutes is a challenge. And now you're trying to tell me that I cannot go outside and do what I normally do and run around and be a kid and have fun? Like, what are you talking about? So
Right.
it's a huge impact on them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I hear you with that one. I mean, even I believe telling them to wear a mask. I remember when we were telling our grandchildren about masks, it was just totally like, what are you talking about? So I
Yeah.
only imagine what families must be going through. But we talked about children. What about college students? Because I think the impact is different, and they are impacted in some way or another as well. So what about the impact on college students?
So there's many, many layers to that. For example, just thinking even about the college athletes, right, who are on scholarships, or who maybe wanted a chance to go to the WNBA or the NBA, or, have scouts recruit them. That's a huge challenge because their season got cut short.
Yes.
And then we're talking about kids or college students who had to go back home because they were displaced and they didn't have anywhere to stay. And so they had to abruptly go home. And, a lot of times students don't have that extra money to pick up and leave and go home. And then you're even talking about just the way that people learn, even though virtual learning is, optional. And I wouldn't even say optional. That's where they're going now, to virtual learning. A lot of students may not thrive in that environment. A lot of college students prefer to be on a college campus. On your college campus, you get to socialize, you get to join clubs, you get to do community activism. It's a chance for them to connect and learn about other people and communicate and interact with diverse groups. So that really is a challenge for a lot of college students. And I'm sure I'm only mentioning, a couple of things. I mean, there's an entire list of how this impacts them economically. It impacts their emotional well-being. So it's really hard. It's really hard for them. It's really hard for everyone, to make these types of adjustments.
Yeah, and speaking of that, of adjustments, this looks like it's going to be around for a while, not going anywhere. It's been declared a public health emergency, and so they can be stressful. They can really be stressful.
Absolutely.
For kids. So parents, can you share, and grandparents too, can you share some signs of stress in children? What parents are looking for?
Yeah, you said stress in kids?
Yes.
Yeah, so, the challenge with kids, especially when they're experiencing stress, they don't have the vocabulary to articulate what's going on with them or what they're feeling at the time, and if they're able to say how they're feeling, they don't know where these feelings are coming from. or why they're feeling that way. So stress in kids may present itself in so many different forms. So for example, a child may have excessive acting out, that's more than what they normally do. There can be, the stress levels can show up in the child being clingy to their parent. They can be tearful. They may have a lot of emotional meltdowns. They may experience aggressiveness towards another sibling, or they can show regression. So, for example, I was talking to one of my good friends, and she has a daughter that's 3 years old and then a younger daughter that's 9 months. Mm-hmm. And she said she started to notice that the 3-year-old was acting out. And she's like, where's this behavior coming from? And she's potty trained, but she was basically showing frustration and acting out to the point where she would go to the toilet, her, potty training toilet, but instead of her urinating in the toilet, she would urinate on the side of the toilet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's an example of regression, right? Mm-hmm. So, these are some of the things where a child may show symptoms of anxiety and stress and how to deal with these things. They may not be sleeping well. So those are some of the signs to look for when, if you feel like your child may be, stressed or have high levels of anxiety during this time. And it's very important that it's addressed, right? Yeah, so I think it's very important to notice those stressful signs in kids.
Okay. And speaking of that, those stressful signs, how do we help them cope? Because we need tips.
Okay.
How can you help them cope with this, especially with this point in this podcast is being recorded in Chicago right now. Mm-hmm. Everything is closed to my listeners. And so how do we help our children cope? And then there are facilities that are closed and we can't even take our children to the facilities to have the needed conversations that we have with healthcare professionals.
Well, one thing that I first want to state is I think communication and transparency is very important. And so what I mean when I say that is I believe that parents or guardians should have honest conversations with their kids about what's going on, right? They should explain to them like, hey, this is what COVID-19 is. Here's the situation. This is why we are doing this. And, and show them that they're protected. We need to provide them with the comfort by saying, I love you, I'm here, and, I'm going to take care of you. So first, just being very transparent on what is going on. And the CDC and World Health Organization has a lot of information on how to, explain to children what's going on and why, we're going away from our norm that we're used to. I also believe that parents should provide a structure, even though that may be challenging and hard. Kids are at home now. And I believe that structure is very important. And so when I say structure, if depending on how old the child is, for example, if the child is in 3rd grade, possibly trying to mimic what their school schedule was, in the classroom setting and putting it in the at-home setting. And, also, I think we have to acknowledge how challenging and stressful it is. And so everything is not going to be perfect, but I think that providing as much structure as possible is important, but also allowing the child to take breaks, right? Because it's completely different from being in a school setting. And there may be distractions. Who knows? There may be a parakeet chirping in the back. There may be dogs running around. But just trying to set a structure that was, close to the school environment, and just acknowledging that these are challenging and difficult times. And so just being as transparent as possible, and basically ensuring that they are safe and loved. And then, there's coping skills that we can teach our kids, whether that's, a meditation or keeping them active, exercise. We can exercise in the house, even though we pay all this money for gym memberships, it's possible to exercise in the house. I think that's really important because kids they're a burst of energy, right?
Right.
And when they're not able to, express this, it shows up in some other form. They're going to get it out, whether we like it or not. So we need to, steer that wheel and allow them to burn some of that energy, and exercise is really good for that. Kids like meditation, but again, it has to be structured. Sometimes you have to make it fun for them because they're, they have imaginations. So that's where parents need to start being creative, incorporating art projects, doing cooking projects where if you're making a pizza, they can join in and sprinkle the cheese. So we just really have to be super creative and try to incorporate them into the everyday process so that it can appear as normal as possible, if that makes sense.
I love it. All of these are excellent tips for parents. These are excellent tips. Thank you so much for those excellent tips. And I think this might tie into what you just said, but that self-care. So self-care, with the self-care, like practicing self-care be the meditation piece of it, or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's more. So another form of self-care, the kids can't socialize with their peers, away because they're in the house, right? They can't see grandma, they can't see their cousins, they can't see their playmate that they usually go have sleepovers with. So, and this is something that I've even done, we do a Zoom family game night.
Oh, okay.
So now there's these resources online where you can pick the games you want to play. There's Uno, there's charades, there's all these games where you can do it virtual now and have a family game night with, the playmate or the grandma and grandpa. You can FaceTime or Google Duo if you don't have an iPhone. But just being creative or, doing art projects, doing puzzles. Mm-hmm. So, that's a form of self-care, and just, avoid placing blame on anyone. So we have to be very mindful of that. And if there's challenges and a parent is not really sure what to do, definitely they can seek some advice from a mental health professional or their doctor if they notice that their child is having symptoms of, stomach pains or emotional distress, not being able to sleep at night. So just noticing these things and making sure that they get the proper support and resources that they need to deal with this.
Well, that's awesome. Again, awesome tips. You just shared something with me. I think I'm going to have a Zoom game night. So thank you for that
tip. It's really fun.
I can't wait. So let's talk about our teachers. Our teachers, I imagine that they are impacted as well. They're used to being in the classroom, teaching students, and so their structure has changed as well in terms of teachers. What advice can you give to teachers as it pertains to remote learning? Because it's about staying connected, but I mean, I don't know.
It's challenging. It's very challenging because you have, depending on how many students they had in the class, just imagine trying to coordinate a number of students virtually, right? And these are not college students, and it's challenging for college students too. But try getting your third graders on board for virtual learning to see how that works. But I'm sure it's very stressful and challenging for teachers. One thing I would say to stay the course, despite these challenges, I think being organized is really important, and communicating effectively with parents and students, right?
Okay.
Because we know that this is not the regular way of learning, and it's going to present with a lot of challenges, especially for those who have IEPs or who are not suffering, but who may have, a learning disability and they need that extra support. That's very challenging, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's a collaborative effort. So, letting teachers know that they don't have to do this on their own. I think they need a strong support system, and that support system can come from, parents being actively involved in, helping the teacher out. And then the administrative team helping the teacher, the leadership team, making sure that they have the necessary tools and resources that they need in order to be successful. And, that's a challenge in the classroom, to make sure the teachers have necessary resources. And then you run into the problem of technology. A lot of times we assume that everyone has a computer, right? And that may not be the case. So is it fair that, that child is not going to learn because they don't have the means to learn virtually? So, I don't know if I have, specific ansers.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's so many layers. What I do know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I found there's an organization called Edutopia, and it's edutopia.org. And on their page, they have some great suggestions for teachers.
Wow. Okay.
So that may be a good resource, to review, because they had a lot of good ideas for helping teachers during this difficult time. And I also think it's important for teachers to have work-life balance, because it can be overwhelming. I think it's important for them to also take the time that they need in order to be able to give their best, right? Because this is uncharted territory. So it's very difficult. But I hope and pray that the teachers have the support that they need from their administrators in order for them to be effective.
And you said Edutopia, right? Can you spell that for us?
Sure. It's edutopia.org.
.org. Okay. Thank you. So,
you're welcome.
Question: how are you keeping yourself healthy during COVID-19?
Well, I eat a lot. So I definitely have been creating a workout schedule. I would be telling a fib if I told you that my sleep routine was normal, because it's not. But I think that's just the downfall of grad school. But I do take naps, so that makes up for me going to sleep late. But I love to work out, which has been hard, right? Because if you're used to running, you gotta run in place. So I mean, people are still going outside, but I haven't been. I've been trying to keep my distance as much as possible. I love to read. I've been reading the Kobe Bryant series, his books. And
awesome.
They're pretty good. And then, of course, I love music. So I listen to a lot of music, and I play my bass guitar. And then, the Zoom family game nights. And I think it's important to try to stay connected to, the people that you love and care about. And that's, where technology comes into play. And even if it's not a Zoom or a video where you're looking at the person, I think just making a phone call and making that conscious effort to say, hey, I was thinking about you. But even still, even if you're not up to doing that, the most important thing is to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I've been seeing a lot of memes saying, you know who your real friends are during the pandemic if you don't hear from them. I just think that's a pile of crap because everyone is coping the best way that they can. We don't know how people are dealing with this. Some people are able to still keep up their same routine, but then there are others that aren't able to. So just because they haven't called you, that doesn't mean that they're not your friend. Everyone is coping with this in a different way. And I think we should not, this is not a good time to be projecting our feelings onto others. So I feel like people should do what is necessary for them to survive in this pandemic. I think that is very important. And that may look different from what I do or what you do, right?
Right.
So I think it's just very important for us to acknowledge that.
Wow. Again, great suggestion. Well, thank you, Renee, for sharing your expertise.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure. And I appreciate everything that you're doing in terms of education advocacy and just providing a platform for mental health workers and other professionals to, put information out there that is credible and substantial to what's going on now.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone. We will see you the next time.
Thank you.